Hey folks, today we're going to be comparing the talents Feral Affinity and Balance Affinity. Asking the question, is Catweaving or Owlweaving going to be better for leveling in the Shadowlands, early endgame, and the pre-patch for Resto Druids, as well as how they feel to play before Covenants? Now then, let's get started. Starting with Feral Affinity, let's look at the changes. Maim has been added to the toolkit. It's a combo point spender that deals less damage than the others, but it does stun a target. On the other hand, the bonus energy regeneration that you get from taking Feral Affinity has been decreased from 45% to 35%. Lastly, we will also add in Heart of the Wild, a new talent that for 45 seconds, on a 5-minute cooldown, increases the damage of all of your Feral abilities by 30% and causes crit from combo point generators, that being Swipe and Shred, to grant a bonus combo point. Currently, Catweaving is king, but it is closer to Balance Affinity than you might think. Now, however, that energy regeneration is harsh, especially while you're under-geared. Creating a template character on the beta, the talent feels much slower than now. You can leave cat form, Moonfire and Sunfire, and return all before your energy is close to capping. On longer encounters, there can be long periods with simply nothing to do, and it does feel bad. With more gear, such as what you will have if you spend any time at BFA's endgame, the regeneration issue can be fixed by having haste, or by simply killing targets before you have time to notice the issue with haste. The issue with this though, is eventually in the Shadowlands you will end up at the point, towards the last few levels when you're in Revendreth, that you just won't have the good gear anymore. Your gear will be on par with generic questing rewards, and that's when you're going to feel it, until you start going through the endgame gearing process. So what about Maim and Heart of the Wild? Well, Maim is a bit underwhelming. It costs combo points that you could simply spend on damage, and the stun matters much less than you would think because you could just spend the huge amounts of downtime that you have just healing yourself up. Heart of the Wild sadly also feels underwhelming. Catweaving's damage comes from both feral abilities as well as Moonfire and Sunfire. Those dots are the two highest damage abilities, yet they're not going to be boosted by Heart of the Wild. You also want to spend more time shredding and swiping for combo points, but the energy just really holds you back, and it doesn't feel that great. It's not all doom and gloom, however. Swipe is still a fantastic ability, and melee is always going to have its place. The ability to just press a button and have something instantly is still going to be better than having to wait for a cast. Feral Affinity really shines though with the Necrolord ability Adaptive Swarm and Night Phase Convoke the Spirits. Adaptive Swarm increases the damage of all your dots on the target on a 30-second cooldown, something that easily can fill a slot that an Essence of Flame could do now, as well as providing raw damage. Since Catweaving uses 4 dots, that being Moonfire, Sunfire, Rake and Rip, it gains a lot from this. Convoke the Spirits is also great, as when it is used in cat form it will trigger powerful feral abilities not limited by your restoration spec. You can use things like Thrash, Tiger's Fury, all of which not neutered by the fact that you are a healer, not a damage dealer. For 4 seconds every 2 minutes, you can mow down 3+ enemies or a single boss in just those 4 seconds, not even counting using Heart of the Wild at the same time, which has got some interesting legendary potential. Alas, the Kirin ability will always be useless to you for damage, and Venthyrs Frenzy has the downside that if you do not use an ability in 1.5 seconds, you will get stunned, something that your lack of energy regeneration is going to cause to happen a lot. On to Balance Affinity and Owlweaving, new additions include Typhoon, the former knockback talent. Also, though not shown on the tooltips currently, there is a new sort of semi-eclipse mechanic, which can cause either Wrath or Lunar Strike to cause the other one to be cast quicker for a short amount of time, and this time to be extended by using Star Surge. Lastly, we have Heart of the Wild, again a 30% damage boost to all balance abilities, this time including Moonfire and Sunfire, and it also makes Star Surge instant cast. Right away, Owlweaving feels more active, especially at the lower gear levels. There is always something to cast. In many ways it operates like it is now. It is a rotation of use either Wrath or Lunar Strike for single target or AoE respectively, and then use the other when the Eclipse procs, with Star Surge on cooldown and obviously dots when needed. While Catweaving lost out with the changes, Owlweaving came out good. Typhoon is better than Maim, as it costs far less DPS and doesn't actually share a category with many other CCs that you would find in a party group. Heart of the Wild benefits you more too, as your abilities count as balance, as I mentioned, the dots in particular, and Star Surge being instant cast is much more reliable than just having a chance or a crit. There are minor positives too if you're under geared. Owls can cast regrowth and not lose their form, and also they have much more bonus armour, which when you are levelling solo and going to be taking physical hits, it's going to be good. Owlweaving, however, still has the issue of being a caster. It's great at first, but when you overgear stuff or keep suffering spell pushback, you can really find Lunar Strike is going to pale in comparison to Swipe. So what about the Covenant abilities? Like with Catweaving, Kyrian's is not going to help. Adaptive Swarm will, but outside Heart of the Wild, Moonton Form does not actually increase the damage of Moonfire and Sunfire. So you're going to deal less dot damage than Feral, so you can fuse Swarm a bit less than they can. Convoke the Spirits will still be great, sending out Star Surges and Starfalls, but its roster is more lackluster than the Cat forms. Not to mention, Starfall is notorious for pulling everything with a huge radius that is going to be forced to cast around you. You're not going to be able to place this carefully, it's going to be exactly where you're stood. Where it does come ahead though is definitely the Venthir's Fury, as you can always cast something every 1.5 unless you happen to be CC'd, whether it's a Star Surge or a Wrath, but in a pinch you can just throw out Moonfire, that can prevent the stun and rack up that juicy haste buff. So which is better? Well, without full Covenant testing, something that I will get onto now we can have level 60 templates, it's hard to give a true answer, but here are my thoughts, a bit feely crafty if you like. Owlweaving certainly feels the best with less gear, namely haste, as well as during Revendreth as it's your first playthrough, that's going to be the last level in zone you'll reach. For a new character, I would recommend Balance Affinity during the intro, Bastion and Revendreth, or always if on your second run through you choose to go with the Venthir or Kyrian. Catweaving, however, when bolstered by gear and the two Covenants that it feels most proactive with, it can kill stuff very quickly and it is going to feel better. If it can't, it's going to feel worse. I would recommend Feral Affinity for geared characters all the way until Revendreth, or if this is your second run and you get to pick a Covenant right away, if you pick either the Nightfale or the Necrolords. For those levelling with quest gear, I would still go Feral Affinity during zones with those abilities, Ardenweald and Maldraxxus. Catweaving, I believe, will actually still end up being king in a dungeon setting. Since you'll spend time healing, that time when you don't have the energy is going to feel less bad. I also believe it's going to abuse the stronger two Covenant abilities, at least in my mind, better than Owlweaving can. That's just a feeling though, and in the end these are actually just talents, and they're going to be easier to swap between than Covenants. Speaking of, I'm going to be working through each Covenant now, through both Feral and Balance Affinity, coming up with some Soulbind and Conduit routes, maybe some legendaries, we'll see on the beta, and I'm going to log down so we can turn some feely crafting into theory crafting. As for me personally, I'm going to be levelling as Feral Affinity until Revendreth, and then swapping to Balance Affinity when I come to do it on live, which hopefully I'll be streaming if it's a midnight release and work permits me. Until then, thanks for watching.